Well, woodworkers, it's that time again. Been about a week since I put my last video on. Today I kind of want to talk to you about buying bulk sandpaper for your drum sander. I'll see if I can give you a little kind of a review on what you're dealing with on rolling out your sandpaper to go on your drum sander. I'll open it up, and the first thing you see here is a clamp that holds the sandpaper at the starting end, and you always rotate the drum away from you as you roll your paper on. On the other end we have one that is matching this, only on the other end it has a spring arm that allows the paper to be drawn tight. So the next thing that I needed to do was to come up with a way to cut my taper on the end of my roll of fiber-backed sandpaper to put on the drum sander. So what I determined to do was to take an old belt strip off of my sander and copy this onto a piece of plywood so that I have a template. So here you see that I have a piece of plywood, and I've cut the angle on it to match with my piece of sandpaper, and it doesn't want to cooperate with me. But I just laid this piece on the sandpaper and cut the angle, as you see here, to match the angle on the old paper. So these are on my Performax 1632. It takes 92 inches total length. So what I then do is take my pin snips, which seems to work about the best for me, and cut off a piece then that is 92 inches long. And then I take the belt and I lay this on it so it's parallel with one end. Let's go back here behind the angle like that, and then I've got room to cut the whole thing. So then the next thing to do is take my little razor knife or X-Acto knife. This one happens to be a DeWalt, and it has the break-off end on it, which is kind of important because these get really dull when you're cutting on this belt. So what I do is just run my knife right along the edge like that, and it takes about 3 or 4 times to cut the angle that you want. And by doing it this way, using a template, it's going to come out. And of course, as I'm trying to give you a demonstration, my idea is showing its problem. But it'll cut through, have it on a part of your bench that you don't care if it gets messed up a little bit, because it's going to, naturally cut through onto the plywood. Another thing you could do if you wanted to is to put another piece of plywood down below to take up so that you're not destroying the nice surface on your table. And the interesting thing about it is that you can take your your piece of belt and just turn the thing end for end, and on the other end of your 92 inch you lay your template on here exactly the same way. And that way they come out to have the right wrap when it comes time for mounting it onto the drum. Well, I've found my 92 inch length on my strip of sandpaper, and now I'm going to cut it with my tin snips right at the 92 inch mark. The next thing then is, ooh, that's noisy, is just line it up. Do everything exactly the same as you did the last time. Bring this around, lay it on here, and square it up with your sandpaper. Clamp it down, just repeating all of the steps we did earlier. So now we do the same thing by just, should get this all lined up square. It's not quite square, so we'll just do a little adjusting. And that end's pretty good. This end's good. And we'll just clamp it all down. And back doing the same repetition that we did before. We want to hold this right against the piece of plywood when we're cutting. So the first time through is your most critical one, because you're making a track for your X-Acto knife to follow the next time through. And it doesn't take long, and you've got the end cut off and ready to wrap. The next thing is, of course, to take our old sandpaper off of the drum and roll our new piece on it, and hopefully everything will work out the way I want it to. I made the mistake of running some wet pine through this belt, and as you can see, it left a big old burn mark on it. That's not a very healthy thing. Sandpaper does not like to have wet, pitchy wood. This doesn't work very good. That burn, and the next time I try to use this belt, why, it just naturally transfers this burn over onto the new piece. Okay, I'll unlatch that. Now we've got everything nice and clean here on our drum. We'll discard the old sandpaper, and we should be ready to go. If everything is done correctly, now this should just spool right on there without any problem. It's got a spring-loaded clamp here. You just release it. Slide the end of your sandpaper down in there where it has a nice bite. And don't go in too deep, because if you do, you're going to end up having it bottom out. Now we just start rolling it around, and the angle that we cut on there will line up, and eventually will spiral around and match up as we go. I usually go a little faster than this, but and it doesn't hurt to use some gloves either, because this is kind of rough stuff that we're dealing with here, and it's kind of hard on fingers. But just for demonstration purposes, we'll just do this way. Another thing you want to do is be careful and not overlap anything with your spiral as you go along. If you do, then it's also, those spots are also going to burn, and then you'll be in big trouble. Now we're almost there. I'm coming around here, and if my tape didn't lie to me, we should come out just about right. And look at that, came out good. Now I have this handy little tool, and I think I picked it up from the same place that I bought the Performax to begin with. And what it does is holds your spring-loaded clamp up in place, and also it goes over top of the sandpaper here and holds it in place while you tuck this into the end here where it's going to clamp everything together. A little bit of a trick to get that down in there, and you can get it on the wrong side of one of the little lips there, and it won't put spring pressure on it. And we need that spring clamp pressure to hold everything in place when it's spinning. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now I'll start the thing and see how it feels. It's always a good idea to run it just a little bit, and then you can figure out if you've got enough pressure on your new belt to hold everything nice and secure, which this seems to be in pretty good shape. So this will be Wayne for the What's Up Wayne channel. I hope I have taught you a little bit of something. I'm not an expert on this matter, but kind of pass on what I've learned through the years, and hopefully you will learn enough from it to be worth your while. I enjoy putting these together. They kind of keep me out of mischief and off of the streets, like they say. So anyway, take care now, and Lord willing, we'll see you next week.